So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. This is so beautiful. We have this blessing that we say over Torah study, and it concludes, or it doesn't conclude. In the middle, it says that we are so lucky and blessed and should continue to be zoche, to merit the blessing of being able to just study Torah at any time, just out of a joy in Torah and a desire to learn more. So may we all continue to merit the ability to be able to just log in and study Torah because we love it at any time and around the world as we are. So I thought we would start with a question. In the Talmud, and when they're asking a question, they'll often say, my something, like M-A-I, something, like what is this? You may have heard of my Hanukkah, or blank, mazeh. So my first question is Torah, mazeh. What is Torah? So take it to the chat and just type in a few thoughts for you about what is Torah. And there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. It's what is Torah?
And you can direct that chat either to me or to Tiferet. Instructions for life.
Jewish learning, 5 books, maybe all learning.
The basis for guidelines for living. God's word revealed at Mount Sinai. A repository of human wisdom. Our history. Insight into happy coexistence.
All right, that's beautiful. That's all correct. So we're here having this conversation. I mean, really, any time of the calendar year is a fantastic time to discuss the nature of Torah and my Torah and Torah Mazeh. But you know, we're coming up on Shavuot, where we celebrate again our recommitment to Torah and to it being a book that we turn to for guidance and for all of the things that you just said. So our mystical teachings teach us that on our holidays and on the Sabbath, we're able to access the mystical creative powers and the light of creation. And we're able to turn the or, the ayin vav resh, which is skin of creation, into the or aleph vav resh, the light of creation. So that means we're able to look anew on the world, not with the klipot. I'm trying to think of a word that's in English. Not with the veil of separateness that we often see the world with, but we're able to see it with the light of creation and to see the unity of things and to see God's hand, God's touch on the world. So we have this holiday of Shavuot, and God willing, we'll all be able to do that. So what are we supposed to do, though, on Shavuot, right? There's no particular mitzvah associated with it. Like on Sukkot, we sit in the sukkah. On Pesach, we make the sacrifice and have Seder and eat matzah and all that stuff. But on Shavuot, there is no particular mitzvah. So, like, what is that? There must be something that we're supposed to do, and there must be a key for it also here in Torah, right? So we call Shavuot Zman Matan Torah, right? The time of the giving of the Torah. So based on that, our job to be in relationship is to receive Torah. And we know that Torah itself, it's a scroll, it's a book, it's words. Torah should be chtav, it's the written word. And even like any kind of Torah, if it's midrash or what have you, it's a written fixed thing without us. And then when we come into relationship with Torah and we transform it into Torah Shebe'al Peh, we transform it into the Torah of our mouths by taking it in and receiving it and making it have all of the meanings that you all just spoke about. That's the work of Shavuot. So we spend some real time engaging in Torah as we understand it. But, what is Torah, and how do we understand it? That's what we're doing here today. So I want to start with a quote from, I'm going to share my screen, make sure it's up somewhere. Share my screen preview. I don't need to share my computer sound. Okay. I'm going to look right here. Can everyone see this text? Fine. I'm sorry it's a little dark. I turned the flash on. I don't know why. But anyways, this is a quote from Ellen Frankel, who is a fantastic author. And this particular quote is taken from the 5 Books of Miriam, a woman's commentary on the Torah. So, what is Torah? Before the world was created, I was. Before the sun was formed on the 4th day, I illuminated the void. My words provided the blueprint for creation, and they contain the script for redemption. To some, I speak only the word of God, transcribed at Sinai and echoing down through the centuries in the words of the rabbis. To others, I myself am but the echo of the bat kol, the divine voice, filtered through the imperfect hearing of those who revere the one who speaks truth. To yet others, I am black fire on white fire, my entire body of letters, a single name of God. And even that name, only the outer garment of the Holy One. Still others regard me as a patchwork of human voices, sewn together by an expert seamstress. But my guises are inexhaustible. Always there are spaces between the letters, gaps yawning wide for new tales. The tradition teaches she is a tree of life to all who hold fast to her, and I am. So let's break this down a little bit, because there's a lot in here, and I think most of what you all said is reflected here in this piece. Before the world was created, I was. And that is from the Midrash, Bereshit Rabbah, the Midrash on the beginning of creation on Genesis, that Torah existed. And in fact, God looked into Torah in order to create the world. So there's this essence of a primordial divine Torah that is the script. Before the sun was formed on the 4th day, I illuminated the void. But that this primordial Torah was the essential light before the 4th day when the sun was created. My words provided the blueprint for creation, a map of how all of this came to be. We drop down a little bit. To others, I myself am but the echo of the bat kol, the divine voice, filtered through the imperfect hearing of those who revere the one who speaks truth. Those who say that Torah was divinely inspired from a sacred source through God's hand. But then I am also black fire on white fire, my entire body of letters, a single name of God. And that's a mystical interpretation of how we receive Torah. And even that name, only the outer garment, there's still layers and layers and layers of truth that exist beyond the words of Torah as we understand them, the mystical connotations that we give them, the hinting connotations. Even beyond that, there's so much more. Still others regard me as a patchwork of human voices sewn together by an expert seamstress. That speaks to documentary hypothesis, to the idea that the Torah was composed by different schools of thought who interacted with each other somewhat and grew off of each other. And then when we got to a time where we needed a canon, the expert seamstress took all of these voices and all of these experiences of God and divine and wove them together to give us this gift of Torah. But always there are spaces between the letters, gaps yawning wide for new tales. then that's the Midrash. That's where we get to be a part of the story. And that's where we do the work of turning this from Torah from a written Torah words that are timeless and come to us through many, many generations, to the stories that impact our lives in this moment, that give us meaning in our day, because we can read them through and receive them in the time that we're in and understand their message for our time and our day. That is the gift of Midrash. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask, how many of you were able to see your view of Torah reflected in Ellen's beautiful piece? Yeah. Right. Are there any other poetic expressions in the vein, in the way that she wrote, that you feel are missing, that you think is also essential for how we see and understand Torah? Feel free to write that in the chat. Anything that you said, well, you're really missing this. It's also a song and a chant. Yes, yes. The melody of Torah, how it can land on our souls, even if we don't understand the Hebrew that we're hearing, we can feel it from the trope and the way it lands. So I'm going to shift gears, go into a different mode. I'm going to share my screen one more time. Back on the same page. I'm going to move it up. You have something with it. Okay. So this number 2 is a quote from Samson Raphael Hirsch, Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, from his book, The 19 Letters. And I think this is a fantastic book. I often recommend it. I just recommended it to my Shavuot yesterday. It's a beautiful book, composed in the style of a correspondence between a student and a teacher. So there's a student asking questions about the essential nature of Judaism and Torah and Israel, and how do we understand and approach these things? And so the rabbi writes back and responds with beautiful and accessible answers for this speaker who is trying to come more deeply into Judaism. And Samson Raphael Hirsch is a German rabbi who is considered the father of modern Orthodoxy and the father of the day school movement. And if you've ever heard the saying, Torah im derech eretz, Torah and worldly knowledge, common courtesy, the way of being in the world, that also comes from Rabbi Hirsch and his philosophy. So, dear friend, forget whatever you have known of Judaism heretofore. Listen as though you had never heard anything concerning its teachings, and you will not only be reconciled to the law, the Torah, but you will be filled with genuine love for it and willingly allow your entire life to be an expression and manifestation of this law. So I feel this is part of our work for Shavuot. Every year, we have the opportunity to unwrap the Torah anew and to decide that that's the relationship that we're going to have with it. And find ways to be amazed again, to encounter things, words that we've seen before, and have new meanings. Because as humans, naturally, we sometimes encounter things that we think we know. And I've done that before, I've read that before, I know what that means. And when it comes to Torah, that's one of our greatest enemies. It's such chutzpah. How can we know what that means? I mean, it was written a gazillion years before we came into being. It was written in a totally different world. How can we say we know what that means? There's even so many layers to what did it mean in the time when it was first given? What did it mean in the 12th century? What did it mean during the Shoah? What does it mean now? And what will it mean for our children and our grandchildren in whatever world they're inhabiting? Right? So when we're able to just forget all that we think we know and humble ourselves to come to Torah again, anew and afresh, ready to learn something new and to approach something differently, then Rabbi Hirsch says, we will be reconciled to Torah, meaning we'll make peace also with some of the things that perhaps are challenging for us about Torah, and God knows, no pun intended, there are a ton of things to be challenged by in Torah, especially in our day and age, but also filled with love and awe for the message that it is giving us and that we are receiving in the moment. So, Rabbi Hirsch, in the way that he breaks down, I'm going to stop sharing for somewhere else, the way that he breaks down what is Torah, is it's very specific about what the Torah is actually made up of. So, pull this out. Okay. So he writes, joined to it furthermore, the laws and ordinances which derive their origin essentially from the life Israel once led as a state, and which, in the absence of land and state, become inapplicable, and you have the essential binding contents of the Torah. All of this and everything that we can't do because we're not, per se, in the land of Israel. But even for those things, thank God, in our day, we found ways to find meaning and apply them in a way that helps us connect even deeper to Torah and our tradition. So, as you see, the first essential component of Torah is Torot, the historically revealed ideas concerning God, the world, the mission of mankind, and Yisrael, not as mere doctrines of faith or knowledge, but as principles to be acknowledged by heart and mind and to be realized in daily living. So my favorite example of that is when we look right at Genesis, on the sixth day, I was trying to remember the verse number, not important, on the sixth day, when humanity is created, we're told, Pru Orvu, right? Be fruitful and multiply and have dominion over the birds and the land and all of that stuff. And also, in the second creation story, we're told that our job as humans in this garden are to tend it and to care for it, to protect it. And so those two essential Torot shape what is the job of humanity and how do we balance using our earth for our needs and for our sustenance, and also caring for the earth to make sure that it is being cared for, not being overworked, and present in a healthy manner for the generations that come afterwards. That's Torah. Mishpatim, statements concerning justice toward creatures similar and equal to yourself by reason of this resemblance and equality, that is, of justice toward human beings. So, right, those are the things that help us understand how we live in relationship with other people, with people who are working for us, and we'll come back to that also. People that we encounter like our relatives. How are we supposed to be? Chukim. These are often the most difficult parts of Torah because they don't really have any reasons, right? Statements concerning justice towards subordinate creatures by reason of the obedience due to God, right? This is God saying, because I said so. One of the prime examples of this is not eating pork. And, now people say, oh, it's because of trigonosis, and it made sense, and there was no refrigeration, et cetera. Great. But other places in the Torah, we have reasons. You don't do this because you were also a stranger in Egypt. Or you rest on Shabbos because God rested. And there's reasons given, and you can find them and cross-reference them in the Torah and make sense out of them, but not with Chukim, right? The Torah doesn't mention anything about trigonosis. So we just take. We don't do that because that's what God said, right? Or I should say, it says because of the cloven hoofs. The issue is, why can't we eat things with cloven hoofs? Like, why not? So we take that on faith as a hope. Mitzvot. This is perhaps what we're most familiar with. Precepts concerning love toward all living things without distinction, purely because it is the abiding of God and in consideration of our duty as men and women, as Israelites. So, of course, I always read this as globally and inclusively as possible, to say that, as an Israelite, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit next week, as an Israelite, the root of Israel is the struggle, right? And so if you are struggling with God, struggling with what is divine, what is God's work for you in this world, what is God's will for us as humans, what does this mean? That is the nature of Yisrael. That's the nature of struggling with struggling with God. And so if you're in the struggle, then this is for you, how I understand it. So these mitzvot include things like visiting the sick, welcoming our guests, tending to the poor and the widows and the orphans, all of those things that are about real chesed, real love. And El is one of the Kabbalistic names that is associated with the realm, the sphere of chesed, the realm of loving kindness. So Yisrael, loving and struggling with what does it mean and how can I best do love, show love as is God's will. That's the nature of the mitzvot. Edot, number 5. Memorials or testimonies to truths essential to the concept of the mission of man and of Israel. So, like the Shema, perfect example. In a lot of Devarim, a lot of Deuteronomy, are these memorials and these testimonies, or even when we come and we bring our first fruits on this holiday that's coming up, that we have a testimony that we're supposed to do. We give the basket to the priest and we say, here's the story of my ancestors, and now here I am in the land of Israel, as we promised God, so I'm making this offering to you instead. And those are the things that we find ways to still do and make meaning out of, because we're not going to the temple with a capital T anymore. But we're still being able to use the guide of Torah in order to make that offer of ourselves and what we have through the holy messages. Number 6. Oh no, number 6 is cut off here. Can I scroll down a little? Yeah. Okay. Avodah. Exaltation and sanctification of spiritual life by symbolic words or acts. This sentence continues. By symbolic words or acts, to the end that our conception of our task may be rendered clearer and we be better fitted to fulfill our mission on earth. Right? So that's how we serve. Avodah is, yes, prayer specifically, but also prayer and meditation, which is prayer, finding joy and guidance in actually serving others and doing work to be of service to others. We say right around the giving of the Torah, Na'aseh v'nishma, I will do and I will understand. I'm gonna do it. I don't understand it right now. I'm gonna follow this guidance, and through that service, I'm gonna understand. And that counts as service. So he says, thus we have as basic principles for these major classifications 3 fundamental concepts: justice, love, and education. That's Torah in a nutshell. Justice, consideration for everything as a creature of God, and regard of every possession as willed in God's decree. Love, that is kindly acceptance of all living things as children of God, as beings of God, as creations of God. And 3, education, the training of oneself and others for such endeavors by taking to heart these truths and principles of life and holding on to them. And that's what we say. Eitz chaim bi l'machazikim ba. Right? The Torah is a tree of life for those who take hold of it, who live their lives and stake their lives on what are the truths in the Torah as we understand them now in our moment, even in the difficult things. Because I always say, sometimes Torah is teaching us what not to do, or Torah is showing us how we have grown, how we can grow, where we still need to grow, or sometimes just what is human nature, and how do we strive to get beyond the human aspect of it and tap into the spiritual nature of the moment. Where were the growing opportunities that some of our characters, our ancestors in Torah perhaps had missed the mark, that we can look at this and say, this is how we are going to live differently. So we're here with this, with these very different, I'm going to stop my share, with these similar but differently intended understandings of Torah. And so I'm curious for you now, are there things that you find, are there things that are still missing that we need to state, this is really essential? And if not, or are there questions that you have or things that you'd like to share? And Julie can unmute. We have a couple of moments for conversation. And I'll tell you, next week we're going to get into, just so you know where we're going, and you don't, if it's not covered today, it will be covered, God willing, in one of the next two sessions. What we're not going to do is authority and written versus oral Torah per se, and what is the nature of revelation, but we're going to get into, we're really just going to keep it focused on Torah. And who knows, maybe we'll get into those things. I'm not planning to it, but you know, God is running the show, not me. So any thoughts, questions?
And if folks want to be unmuted, you can chat me in the chat box that you want to be unmuted, or use the raise hand function under the participant box, or in the participant box.
And certainly things for you that are challenging, you know, about what we just looked at, things that you perhaps don't agree with, and that's absolutely fine as well.
Wendy's asking for more examples of edot and avodah.
Oh, sure. Let me go back to the text. Edot. Let me reshare my screen. Okay, so edot, again, memorials or testimonies to truths essential to the concept of the mission of humanity and of Israel. These testimonies comprise symbolic words or acts which bear lessons of profound significance for the individual Jewish person and for Israel as a whole, and for mankind in general. So we said the Shema, and the declaration that we make when we come, I'm raising my hand because I think we're supposed to, the language of the word includes raising the hand. When we bring our first fruits to the temple, and we have that declaration, which starts, Arami, oh my gosh, it's from Pesach. Dear God. And my father was a wandering Aramaean. And what are other things that we have to say? And other people are welcome to throw into the chat also. In when Moses is giving the instructions for what we do for Passover and how those things got put together, it's like when this child says this, we say, it is because God did this for me. All of the things that are prescriptive in the Torah. And you know what? I can find more examples. I can comb through the text some more and pull out particular verse citations for you to read them, because I think it would be a little bit more clear if I could read the language for you specifically.
And Ernest has an idea. Would you include making a vow?
I think so. Especially with the formula that we use of making a vow, because it's part, I've lost you, where are you? It's part of when we make a vow, there's a story that goes along with it. There's a reasoning. So I think that's true. I think I would include making a vow. And I'm going to try to find some examples of that for next week in the text that more clearly illustrate a dot. And avodah really is the acts that we do, the things that we do that are the things that Torah tells us to do that are of service, like making sure that we shoo away the mother bird before we take the eggs, or right, like that's kindness, and that's service to the Holy Blessed One and service to the animal. And I should also say there are things that obviously overlap within these categories. All of the ritual things that we have to do that the priests especially are given to do. The act of tithing, which is service as well. The laws of Shemitah and of the year of release, and the year of the things that go along with Yovel. So all of that's avodah. Those are the acts that we have to do. I have another thought. Oh, thank you. Aramio Vedavi. That's like, what happens when it gets to 80 degrees? Oh, yes, the stones on Mount Ebal, and the other mountain with the blessings and the curses, and leaving the corners of the field. All those things that we have to do that count as service. But that's also the edot, the blessings and the curses. That's edot. That's the memorial and the testimonies category of, telling about the stories and the consequences and the blessings, etc.
Carol had a question.
Sure.
Carol, you're unmuted.
Or not.
Okay. I don't know if this appears in Torah, but there is a declaration that we make when someone dies, that God is the judge.
Yeah.
And it's an acknowledgement that we accept God's judgment. Would that fall under the heading of testimony?
Theoretically, yes, but that's not in the Torah, like the 5 books of Moses Torah. We get that from the Talmud. But yeah, that's something that we would have, that we say, and like that in theory would be part of the edot. All right, so a taste of next week. Next week, we're going to jump in, building on this foundation that we have of Torah is these things for us that we're understanding and looking at. And I can also share this document with you somehow. Julie can share this document with you so that you can turn it over and over during the week. Next week, we're going to look at Mordechai Kaplan's take on what is Torah. So Torah from a Reconstructionist perspective. And being that we're Americans and Reconstructionism was the first American movement. So that also very much still speaks to Judaism today and America today. Not to say that the other movements don't, just that we're here it's very American. And also what is Torah according to my teacher, Rabbi Art Green? And what is our job and our responsibility once we have received Torah? What do we do with it? So that is for next week.